In what many are calling the storm of the century, Hurricane Milton made landfall off Florida's coast, unleashing tornadoes and a wide S of the state with life-threatening flooding. Now it has made landfall near Siesta Key as Category 3 hurricane, which is the third largest level. This comes mere 2 weeks after Hurricane Helen battered the state, leading to close to 2 million people to evacuate from the region. Alright, just to give you the latest, and want to know about Hurricane Milton. Hurricane Milton made landfall near Siesta Key, Florida Wednesday night as Category 3 storm. It has since weakened to Category 1. The storm is on track to break across Florida peninsula after landfall and head into the Atlantic Ocean. No maps show Milton is expected to flood parts of Florida's Gulf Coast with storm surge as high as 9 to 13 feet. Of course, more than 2.8 million customers were without power in Florida early on Thursday. In the city of Sarasota near Siesta Key, gusts of wind blew panes of glass from buildings on the waterfront. The streets were deserted and trees weighed almost horizontal, barely able to withstand the wind. Businesses were shuttered and sandbagged. The airports in Tampa and Sarasota were closed until further notice. Strong winds and rain from Hurricane Milton buffeted an apartment complex in St. Petersburg as the storm tore across Florida. Milton triggered tornadoes before its arrival, as well, with unconfirmed reports of multiple fatality after one twister struck a senior living community on Florida's east coast. The White House said that President Joe Biden was briefed on the initial impacts of Milton. Tidal surges were expected to inundate western Florida's heavily populated and low-lying Gulf Coast. Lightning briefly cut power to traffic lights as Hurricane Milton marched across central Florida. Now streets are flooded in the U.S. city of Fort Myers as Hurricane Milton blast ashore in Florida as well. Milton is later expected to rip through inland areas towards the Atlantic Ocean, with tourist hub Orlando, home to Disney World, in its path in cities up and down Florida's western coast. The wind howled furiously and torrential rain fell as people took shelter wherever they could. Now to discuss more on the hurricane, we were earlier joined by Daniel Schrag, a professor of environmental science and engineering, and he's also the director of the Harvard University Center for the Environment. He joined us from Cambridge, giving us the latest look at this.
Well, unfortunately, for a storm this big, and there was a lot of uncertainty about just how powerful the winds were going to be when it actually made landfall. It was a Category 5 storm this morning, but it was expected to weaken because as it came close to the coast there were winds, high altitude winds, that were disrupting the hurricane, and that's a good thing. That meant that it was going to weaken, but let's be clear, it's great that it wasn't a Category 5 storm with winds over 160 m an hour, but when it made landfall it still had winds at 120 mil an hour, and that can do incredible damage, tearing houses apart. Not as bad as a Category 5 storm, but still very damaging. As soon as it makes landfall it weakens enormously, but still very high winds, and that can cause a lot of problems. People don't like to leave their homes in these situations. They like to say, I'm just going to stay in my home and do the best I can. The problem is, if this was a slightly stronger storm, no home would be safe, and we've seen this in a variety of places around Florida. When the storms get really big, the damage can be so great that no place is safe. Thanks for watching this video.